On December 22, 1938, a young museum curator in South Africa got a phone call from a fishing boat captain. He'd caught something strange, something he didn't recognize, something that didn't look like it belonged in the present. She went down to the docks, waded through a pile of sharks and seaweed and sponges, and then she saw it. 5 feet long, pale mauve blue with white flecks, covered in thick, armor-like scales. 4 fins that protruded from its body like limbs. Not fins, limbs. Like something trying to decide whether it wanted to be a fish or something else entirely. She had never seen anything like it. Nobody had. Not in living memory. Because the last time this animal had been seen alive, the dinosaurs hadn't happened yet. This fish, the coelacanth, had been extinct for 66 million years. Every textbook said so, every fossil record confirmed it, every paleontologist on Earth agreed. It was gone, except it wasn't. It had been down there the whole time, living its life, completely unbothered. While the dinosaurs rose and fell, while continents drifted, while ice ages came and went, while every major extinction event in the last 400 million years reshaped the planet, the coelacanth did not care. This is its story. And the twist at the end of this one is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about the word extinct. Let's go back to that dock in East London, South Africa. December 1938. Her name was Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer. She was 30 years old, self-taught, had never had formal scientific training, and was running a small natural history museum largely on her own determination. She'd asked the local fishing captains to call her whenever they brought in something unusual. Most of the time, that meant the occasional strange shark or an interesting sponge. This time, Captain Hendrik Goosen had something else. Marjorie couldn't identify it, but she knew, the way you sometimes just know, that it mattered. She sketched it carefully, contacted J.L.B. Smith, a fish expert at Rhodes University, sent him the drawing, and then she waited. Smith received the letter on January 3rd. He stared at the sketch. His mind went to a place he immediately told himself was impossible. He wrote back telling Marjorie the fish had caused him much worry and sleepless nights. He needed to see it in person. He was desperate. By the time he arrived at the museum on February 16th and stood in front of the preserved specimen, he later described the moment like this. The first sight hit him like, and I'm paraphrasing here because his actual words were almost too dramatic to read aloud, a white-hot blast. He stood as if turned to stone, scale by scale, bone by bone, fin by fin. It was a coelacanth, a fish that by every scientific account had been dead for 66 million years. He sent a telegram immediately that became one of the most famous in the history of biology. It read, "Most important preserved skeleton and gills, fish described." 6 words. That was all he could manage. The discovery made global headlines. The Auckland Star ran the headline, "Loch Ness outdone." Scientists from around the world contacted Smith. A museum curator in New York called it one of the events of a lifetime. It was the scientific equivalent of someone walking a living dinosaur into a museum. Except, and this is the part that fascinates me, the coelacanth wasn't a dinosaur. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a fish, doing what it had always done, hunting in the dark, deep water off the coast of Africa. Science had declared it extinct. The coelacanth hadn't got the memo. Okay, so what makes the coelacanth so extraordinary, beyond the sheer improbability of its existence? Let's start with those fins. Most fish move their fins in a wave, a fluid, sweeping motion. The coelacanth moves its paired fins in an alternating pattern, left front, right back, right front, left back, like a trotting horse, like a land animal walking. That's not a coincidence. The coelacanth belongs to a group of fish called lobe-finned fish, sarcopterygians, the same group that, around 375 million years ago, produced the first creatures to crawl out of the ocean and onto land, the ancestors of every reptile, every bird, every mammal, every human being alive today. The coelacanth is, in an almost uncomfortably direct sense, a window into the moment our family climbed out of the water. Its fins contain actual bones and muscles, arranged in a pattern that closely resembles the early limb structure of the first land vertebrates. When you watch a coelacanth move in slow motion underwater, and there is footage of this. It's extraordinary. You're watching something that looks almost like a proto-walk, the ghost of a motion that led, eventually, to everything. But here's where it gets really strange. The coelacanth doesn't have a proper backbone. It has a notochord, a hollow, oil-filled tube running the length of its body that functions as a kind of primitive spine. This is a feature that most vertebrates have only in the embryonic stage. We all start with a notochord before a real spine develops. The coelacanth never upgraded. It also has a hinge joint inside its skull, literally a movable joint within the bones of its head that lets it swing its upper jaw upward to open its mouth wider. No other living vertebrate does this. And perhaps the most unsettling feature, a small organ in its snout that can detect the electrical fields produced by living organisms nearby. It essentially feels your heartbeat through the water before it can even see you. It can swim upside down, backwards, head down, hanging almost vertical in the water column, completely still, using this electroreception to scan for prey below. 400 million years old, still adding features. So here's the question that scientists had to answer after 1938. Where had it been? How do you hide a 5-foot, 200-pound fish for 66 million years? The answer turns out to be surprisingly simple. The coelacanth lives in the deep, specifically in underwater caves and steep volcanic slopes off the coast of East Africa and Indonesia at depths of 100 to 700 meters, in water that stays permanently cold, dark, still, far below where most fishing or scientific observation ever reached. And here's the key. Deep underwater volcanic slopes are terrible places for fossilization. Fossils form when organisms die, are buried in sediment, and mineralize slowly over millions of years. In deep, active underwater terrain, with tectonic movement, no soft sediment, no burial, bodies just disappear. There's nothing to preserve. Scientists have a name for animals like this. Lazarus taxa, named for the biblical figure raised from the dead. Species that vanish from the fossil record and then reappear, apparently back from extinction. And the coelacanth became the textbook case, the most famous Lazarus taxon in history. But, and this is the part that reframes everything, what if extinct never meant what we thought it meant? The coelacanth wasn't gone. It was just in a place we hadn't looked. The fossil record is a record of what got preserved, not a record of what existed. Every paleontologist knows this, but the coelacanth made it viscerally, undeniably real. If a 5-foot fish can hide from science for 66 million years, what else is down there? In 1998, 60 years after the first discovery, a second living coelacanth species was found, not off Africa, off the coast of Sulawesi, Indonesia, nearly 10,000 kilometers away, a completely separate population genetically distinct enough to be classified as a different species living undiscovered on the other side of the ocean. Science missed it twice. Okay, here's where I want to take this somewhere unexpected, because this video could just be a living fossil, cool discovery, wild biology piece. And that would be fine, but there's a harder question buried in the coelacanth story that I haven't seen anyone really sit with. The coelacanth genome, sequenced fully in 2013 by a team at the Broad Institute, confirmed something remarkable. The coelacanth's genes are evolving more slowly than those of virtually any other vertebrate on Earth. Not a little slower, significantly slower. Across every major gene group they compared, the coelacanth was consistently the most genetically stable organism in the sample. One researcher said, "We found that the genes overall are evolving significantly slower than in every other fish and land vertebrate that we looked at. This is the first time we've had a big enough gene set to really see that." A 2025 study confirmed the coelacanth's lifespan is likely around 100 years. Sexual maturity, around 50 years old. Gestation period, 5 years. 5 years to carry a pregnancy? This is an animal operating on a completely different clock to everything else. Slower metabolism, slower reproduction, slower evolution. It found a stable environment, cold, dark, largely unchanged, deep water, and it settled in and it stopped needing to change. And here's what unsettles me about that. We tend to talk about evolution as progress, adaptation, improvement. The animals that survived the asteroid, the ice ages, the oxygen crises, we think of them as winners, resilient, tough. But the coelacanth didn't survive by adapting. It survived by finding a corner of the world that never changed. Unchanged and staying in it for 400 million years. It didn't evolve its way through 5 mass extinctions. It hid from them, which raises a deeply strange question. Is the coelacanth one of the most successful animals in the history of life on Earth, or is it one of the most fragile? Because right now, in 2025, the deep volcanic slopes off East Africa are changing. Deep-sea trawling, acoustic disruption, ocean temperature shifts penetrating deeper than they ever have before. The coelacanth is currently listed as critically endangered. After 400 million years of doing absolutely nothing wrong, after outlasting the dinosaurs, the ice ages, 5 mass extinctions, it now faces something it has never encountered before. An environment that changed faster than it could hide from. There's a version of this story that's a triumph. A fish that defied extinction, survived everything, kept its ancient body plan intact for 400 million years, and let us peer backward through deep time at our own evolutionary origins. And there's another version of the same story that's a warning about what happens to creatures that survive by staying still when the world decides to move. Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer lived until 2004. She was 97 when she died. She spent most of her life fielding questions about that December morning on the dock in 1938. She gave interviews, accepted honors, watched the coelacanth become one of the most studied and celebrated animals on Earth. She never stopped being astonished by it. In one of her last interviews, she said she still couldn't quite believe it had happened, that she'd looked at something ancient and impossible and recognized it for what it was, not because she'd been trained to, but because she'd been paying attention. I think about that a lot. The coelacanth was always there, swimming in the dark, 300 meters down, completely unchanged. All it took was one person at the right dock on the right morning who had asked the right fisherman to call her if he found something strange. It makes you wonder what else is down there. What else science has filed undergone that's just waiting for someone to be paying attention. Next in this series, something that's been alive even longer than the coelacanth in an environment even more extreme, and whose biology is so strange that scientists are genuinely debating whether our normal understanding of aging applies to it at all. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop a comment. What's the most mind-bending part of the coelacanth story for you? I'm genuinely curious whether it's the discovery, the biology, or the conservation angle. It's different for everyone. See you in the next one.